So I just got back from seeing Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, the the end of what's being considered the Skywalker saga, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail, but just right off the bat, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are a Star Wars fan, definitely go see this movie. I would say of the three sequel movies, Episode 7, 8, and 9, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and this one is by far the best one. I won't say it's as good as the original trilogy, but I will say it would be like just like right below it. I would overall it's better than the prequel trilogy. Basically, okay. When the Last Jedi came out, I think a lot of Star Wars fans kind of had a bit of a sour taste in our mouths about what had become of the franchise. We wondered, okay, how can they pull themselves back from what they did here? I mean, the whole killing off Luke, the whole Rey's parents just being random nobodies, all that stuff. So it basically fell into a J.J. Abrams' hand to kind of to try to salvage this thing. And in my opinion, salvage it he did. He ended up basically picking up a lot of the pieces that Rian Johnson had left behind, and he made something that I actually really liked. I mean, there were a lot of times in the movie I basically found myself grinning like an idiot. Like, Star Wars is back. So, I mean, basic stuff, basic, movie stuff out of the way, the special effects, come on, it's Industrial Light and Magic. It is going to be good. And it is awesome in this movie. There's a ton of awesome special effects, including a scene where, a little bit of spoiler, but basically we end up seeing the return of basically planet-destroying lasers as we see yet another planet get blown up, which seems to be happening a lot in this trilogy. Just saying. Let's see here. The music, it's classic Star Wars. You cannot go wrong with Star Wars music. So, now for what everybody's probably wondering about, the storyline. I am going to be getting into some spoilers here, but you'll if you've seen the title of this video, you know that already. You know that's why I do. I like to get in depth and give my thoughts on some of these things, okay? So, one thing that J.J. Abrams has been accused of a lot, one thing he was definitely accused a lot of with The Force Awakens was being really derivative and copying a lot of the stuff that came before, especially in terms of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. You could make a case that he's still doing a bit of that, somewhat copying, because The Rise of Skywalker has elements of Return of the Jedi, but when it comes to the general plot line, it's basically Dark Empire, the movie. Now, for those who don't know what Dark Empire is, back when Dark Horse Comics, like they had issued a whole bunch of different comic storylines as part of the old expanded universe, and there was a storyline that took place about 6 years after Return of the Jedi called Dark Empire. It was a three-part thing. You had Dark Empire 1, Dark Empire 2, and Empire's End. And basically, if you know what that's about, you'll kind of know what the storyline for The Rise of Skywalker is about. Because in this one, we end up seeing the return of Emperor Palpatine. That's not a spoiler. You see it right there in the opening crawl. And they address it, like, in one of the very beginning scenes. Like, they mention about cloning and about techniques known by the Sith, which is basically how Palpatine came back in Dark Empire. He had them make a clone of his body and then kind of transferred his Force essence into that clone body. So, So yes, Palpatine is back, and he, again, like in Dark Empire, he's raised up this and built this whole huge fleet of Imperial ships called the Final Order. Yeah, you got First Order, you got Final Order. Yeah, real imaginative there, guys. Whatever, okay. I can look past that. So now Palpatine himself is looking for Rey, and he sends Kylo Ren out to look for him, to look for. So, why, you may ask? You remember how kind of a running thing from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi is who is Rey's where is Rey's family and all this? This movie answers it somewhat definitively. Now, if you don't want me to tell you who it is, turn this video off right now, okay? I mean, we learned this about halfway through the movie, but I mean, if you want to remain unspoiled on that part, go ahead and shut this video off now. I'll give you about 5 seconds. Alright, you guys still here? Awesome. So, basically, Rey is not a Solo, and to my great surprise, she is not a Skywalker. Like, she is not Luke's kid, which I was really hoping would be the case, but whatever. Rey is not even a Kenobi, which I know there was some advanced stuff that said that she might be. Rey is a Palpatine. Now, again, you might call bullshit on this, but let me explain, and there's actually a precedent for this. So, apparently at some point during his lifetime, Palpatine had a kid. Now, this has happened in quite a few of the books. There was a children's book series. It was basically called the Glove of Darth Vader series, where Palpatine had a son named Triclops, who, really weird dude. He had like 2 eyes here and 1 on the back of his head. And then Triclops ended up having a kid named Ken, who was one of the main characters in that book. So, again, Palpatine's grandkid. And also in some of the other books, Palpatine had been shown basically getting his freak on and with concubines and basically ending up creating Force-sensitive kids that way. So, I mean, there actually is a precedent for this. I can give them that. So, and I know I say so a lot. So, except this is one element I kind of wish that the movie would have dug into a little bit more, because we're not really given any names for Palpatine's son, but we know that he and his wife are basically the ones that arranged for Rey to be left on Jakku, except it turns out it's to basically hide her from the Emperor and basically to keep her safe. So it turns out that Palpatine is looking for her, and like I said, he sends Kylo Ren out to find her. Now, throughout most of the movie, we're told that Palpatine wants to kill Rey, thinking that she's the only one that could really stop him. Spoilers, she does. But we find out toward the end of the movie that his big grand plot is to have her kill him, and then he's going to transfer his Force essence and basically take over her body and rule the Sith Empire that he's wanting to found in a new, stronger, younger body. Now, again, before you call bullshit on this, that's basically what he wanted to do in Empire's End. He wants to die and then transfer his Force essence into Han and Leia's kid Anakin Solo. So, yeah, it's basically the same kind of thing here. So it's up to everybody to come together to find the planet that Palpatine and his Sith fleet is on, and to basically stop the fleet from taking over the galaxy. Again, I mean, it's stuff that has been shown before. It's not reinventing the wheel by any stretch, but the way it plays out actually is really good. I mean, we do see the return of the bond between Rey and Kylo Ren, where he's trying to get her to join the dark side, she's trying to get him to join the light side, and it ends up basically playing out one of the few ways that you might expect. But it was actually a pretty satisfying end to watch at the end of that storyline. Also, this movie actually does have a lot more emotional moments than either The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi had. And it basically, you hear a lot of previews and reviews for movies and stuff refer to them as an emotional roller coaster. I would call this movie an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes there's some cheap ups and downs, but it'll definitely take you along for the ride. Like, there's one scene where we see that Chewie had actually been captured and taken onto a First Order transport. And Rey comes out, and she's basically trying to pull a Force Awakens, trying to pull this transport back out of the sky to save Chewie. And then Kylo Ren shows up, and there's basically like this big Force tug-of-war thing going on. And then we see Rey getting absolutely pissed off and basically accidentally conjuring up a bunch of Force lightning and blowing the transport out of the sky. And for a while, she's afraid that and thinks that she killed Chewbacca. And for a while in the movie, I sincerely thought that she did by sheer accident. Except it turns out that the transport that she destroyed was not the one that Chewie was put on. So it ends up being a plot point where they end up having to rescue him later. Which they do, yes, thankfully Chewie does survive this movie, thank God. But it definitely, it felt like something that really could have happened. So, let's see here. What else do I want to cover here? I mean, even C-3PO is given an interesting storyline where he ends up, they find this Sith dagger that has an inscription on it that's supposed to lead them to this wayfinder, this gadget that's supposed to be able to tell them where the planet is that Palpatine's on. And 3PO finds it, except for some reason he was programmed to not be able to give a translation for the ancient Sith language. So they basically have to take him to this black market lab to try to pull the information out of his head, which pretty much ends up wiping his memory. Don't worry though, he gets better. He gets better. Don't get too scared for 3PO yet. Because it turns out that R2 actually ended up keeping a backup of 3PO's memory up to a certain point, and they're able to fix him that way. But what I'm getting at is, for a while, they actually make it look like 3PO is going to, for all intents and purposes, die. And 3PO is given this scene where, like, he realizes that everything's riding on him. Like, they need this information that's in his head that he's not able to voluntarily give out. And he's realized that, you know, if they screw up and the First Order takes over everything, then it's gonna all be for nothing. Like, there's also this really emotional scene where he just gets up, turns around, looks at everybody, and like, what are you doing? It's like, I want to take one last look at my friends before I die. And if you're somebody like me that's watched all the movies, and from his very first appearance in in the original Star Wars up till now, it definitely hits you right here, because you think, he's sacrificing himself for the mission for everybody. And what happens is that they go through the procedure, and it does erase his memory. It basically sets him back to factory settings, where like they end up being able to turn him back on, but he's just like, "Oh, hello, I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations," and trying to get to know everybody all over again. But then when they make it back to the Resistance base, R2 is able to help re-upload his memory back in, so that's cool. Um, there is one part in this movie that it basically, I gotta talk about the bantha in the room here. This is Carrie Fisher's last movie. Both her last Star Wars movie, her last anything movie before she died. And I read that they actually used a lot of unused footage from The Force Awakens to help fill in a lot of the gaps too. I don't know which footage was taken from Force Awakens and which one was if anything was already shot. But they do give Leia a rather dignified exit, much more than they gave Han or Luke, for crying out loud. But like there's a scene where they're on where the main characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, and them, they're on Endor trying to find the Sith Wayfinder, which it turns out was locked up in a vault on the second Death Star. So they're basically combing through the wreckage of the second Death Star to find this thing. And they find it, or Rey finds it, and after this vision of her turning to the dark side, Kylo Ren ends up showing up, and they end up having this big fight among the wreckage of the Death Star, which is actually a pretty decent little fight. Rey is obviously not classically trained with a lightsaber. You can definitely tell that watching her fight, but damn it, she's doing her best on this thing. And so there's a part where Kylo Ren has her down on the ground like he's getting ready to finish her off. And while this is going on, Leia is actually reaching out through the Force to try to reach her, to try to reach Kylo Ren, because of course Ren is her son Ben. And she's able to connect with him, and long enough to be able to spare Rey's life, and for Rey to end up winning the fight. Which I'm not going to tell you how. Go ahead and see the movie. I'm not going to tell you everything that happens. Okay. I mean, I'll get into a little detail after this, but I want to talk about this part first. Okay. So, anyways, so Leia manages to reach Ben, but it turns out this basically Leia's getting old here. Okay, she's getting old. She's been through a lot, and being able to reach him through the Force one more time basically takes whatever strength she has left in her, and she ends up, passing away on this little bed they have set up for her. And honestly, it is a really sad, touching scene. Like she ends up passing away and basically leaving Poe in charge of the Resistance fleet, which, I mean, it's good. I liked it. Okay. I hate that they had to kill off the main three from the originals, but at least Leia got a pretty dignified way out. So, okay. Actually, I probably should kind of tell you how the Rey Kylo Ren fight ends, because I mean it does there's precedent for this in the expanded universe too, where while he's distracted by Leia reaching him, Rey manages to pick up Ren's saber and like stabbing him right through the gut. And I thought, wait, they're actually killing Kylo Ren off? I mean, there's still a fair bit of movie left. But then she basically force heals him. Actually, even before that, we see her being able to use the Force to heal this giant worm snake creature thing that looks like you wouldn't be out of place in Dune or Tremors or something. But like she sees this creature and it's like all scraped up on its underside, and she basically puts her hand on it and uses the Force to heal it. Now we don't see this in the movies, but we actually do see it in like a lot of the games, a lot of the books and stuff. Just adjusting the camera there. Yes, I got quite a few Gundam models I got to build. Got a bit of backlog there, I know. But so she's able to use the Force to heal. And this is a skill that is actually used a lot, like I said, in the games and the books. Like, there's even a two-part book series called the MedStar Duology, which takes place during the Clone Wars that stars Barriss Offee, a Jedi who she's really proficient in using the Force to heal others. So Rey is able to pick up on that. I'm going to guess it's probably like in one of the Jedi texts or something. It's a pretty safe assumption to make, but anyways, so she's able to do that. So that ends up being a thing. Now, and it's actually a really important element throughout the story, because after the fight with Kylo Ren where she basically shish kebabs him with his own lightsaber, she ends up using the Force to heal his stab wound, and then leaves him there, and this basically ends up being one of the kickers to Kylo Ren basically being redeemed. Again, spoilers, I know. But you saw the title of this video. You know what you're getting into. So Ben actually ends up... Yeah, he's basically going from being Kylo Ren to being Ben Solo again. We see him having this conversation with Han Solo, which is actually really touching, where Han reminds him, like, okay, yeah, I know your mom's gone, but everything that she stood for and was fighting for is still there. He's like, I know. Ben's like, I know what I gotta do. I just don't know if I'm strong enough. And Han's like, you are. And we actually see Ben take his cross-guarded lightsaber, just pitching it to the waters on Endor, and he's basically come back around to the light side, which... So generally when somebody ends up getting redeemed in these kind of stories, one of two things happens. They either get a happy ever after, or they die. Care to take a guess what's going to end up happening here? Okay. So Rey ends up getting the... well, she doesn't get the Wayfinder that she's looking for, because Ren actually ends up destroying that one right before they have their big fight. But she ends up stealing the one off of Kylo Ren's ship, and uses that to find the Emperor, after actually having a really cool scene with Luke's Force Ghost back on the planet he was on. Because she's trying to hide there at first to stay away from Palpatine, because she actually had this vision that she was going to end up turning bad and was going to sit on the throne of the Sith. But Luke, ends up telling her that, okay, look, honestly, I shouldn't have ran. I was wrong. I was scared. But facing your fear is part of what a Jedi has to do. And if you don't, Palpatine wins. So, and he basically ends up giving her the nudge to keep going. And she's like, but I don't have the Wayfinder anymore. It Ren destroyed it. And Luke's like, you already have everything you need. And that's when she realizes that the Wayfinder is still on Kylo Ren's ship that she stole to end up getting to Luke's planet. So she ends up using that, and in an element that I actually like, Luke's Force Ghost actually raises up his old X-Wing that he used, and Rey ends up using that to get to the planet. So she ends up getting this planet and basically ends up giving the whole Resistance a course to get there. So this is setting everything up for the big finale, where they're okay. No, guys, just go see this movie, all right? I'm not going to spoil the absolute ending for you, but just listen to everything I said and know that everything does build up. And actually, one thing I love that I gotta mention is that you will see some really surprising returns in this movie, because one of the elements is before the fight. One thing I forgot to mention: when they get to this the planet where the Sith dagger is on, guess who they run into? Lando Calrissian. Yep, Billy D. Williams is back, and he is just as awesome as ever in this movie. He ends up helping them out on this planet, and then later on he ends up joining back up with Resistance. So he and Chewie end up taking off to try to find any other rebellion, republic, whatever you want to call them, forces that they can to try to help out with this big fight against the Sith Empire, the Final Order. And I love this. There's a scene where the Resistance thinks that, man, we're outnumbered, we can't do it. And Lando gets on the thing, is like, there's a lot more of us. And then you see this huge rebel fleet showing up with a lot of characters from the original trilogy, including being a huge, like, I am a huge fan of the X-Wing games and books. And one of the characters that we actually see a quick cameo of is Wedge Antilles, and the leader of Rogue Squadron. And I absolutely loved that. I think I geeked out right there in the theater. I was like, oh my god, it's Wedge! He's back! So, so basically, everybody all comes together, and it just makes this fight huge and epic, and it is really good. It actually really good. Screw it. It is awesome. So there's this fight going on here, and Rey ends up having to find and face Palpatine. And Ben's trying to go catch up to Palpatine and Rey to help out. And everything just all comes together, and it is awesome. It is Star Wars. So, guys, I'm rambling on about this for like a half hour, which, you know, I mean, it's shorter in some videos, longer in some videos, but I'm saying everything I can think of that I want to say right now. But let me just say this, okay? If you are a fan of Star Wars, go see this movie. If you're not a fan of Star Wars, what the hell are you doing starting with the ending? Go back and watch the other movies first. But no, this movie, with me, it hit all the right notes. It did everything right that The Last Jedi did wrong. And it gives the Skywalker saga what I felt to be a very satisfying conclusion. And we actually see, like, there's a lot of nods to the original series, which some may call it copying and derivative, but they're touches that I really like to see put into it. So, guys, just look. I've already said a lot of stuff that happens, but there is a lot more in this movie. So, in my opinion, it's definitely worth the time to see. So just go to it. And with this movie, the Skywalker saga comes to an ending. I don't know if I don't know if they're gonna make any more Star Wars movies. I may review those. If they do, I may not. This one, I absolutely had to. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. I'm not going to say my usual for the Mathiason project. This is Thor Mathiason signing out. Instead, I'm just going to say, until next time, may the Force be with you.